Hi everybody, welcome back. We're here at Nova Gardens on a very, very famous tennis court. Some of the biggest names in South Australia would have played on this tennis court, but we're here to talk to one of the great women of South Australian sport. Jenny Williams joins me now. Jen, thanks for your time.
My pleasure, Phil. Do you ever play tennis out here?
Well, yeah, gee, you didn't take long to get into it, did you? Oh, you know I played here. I played against your brother, I played against your husband, and I've never won a game here. Why would that be? Bad tennis player or you cheat?
Could be both.
You can't play.
One end is longer than the other end, and that way we always put, you know, like the opposition down the end that doesn't favour them.
So I'm playing sort of uphill,
yeah,
really?
all the time.
Yeah,
all the time.
I thought a lot of the balls
Actually,
were in that were
you
called
can't
out.
play.
Okay, thanks.
It's
Good.
can't
So
play.
I've come here today to get my confidence boosted by the great psychologist. I've just been shot down in flames. Jen,
You've got to be realistic at some time.
You have to be. Let's talk a little bit about your career. Women in sport don't get a lot of profile anywhere. It's not just South Australia, but we're talking just about South Australia. So, I mean, silver medals, bronze medals, captain, coach, lacrosse, one of the greatest players in the world at lacrosse, yet very little publicity. Why is that?
I don't know, at our time we actually did get a lot of publicity and it was great. That was called the 80s, and for some reason women and a lot of elite women have disappeared, and probably I'd say the biggest difference between being an older and great sports guy and being an older and perhaps great sportswoman is that we disappear while you guys get revered. And I think that's one of the thing that's sad, and I'm actually trying to say there's a lot of really great older sportswomen out there who never get to do sports nights or that, because somehow people think only blokes had a good time when they play sport and they don't know we've got good stories too.
Do you want to share? No, I don't want to hear those stories now. But I mean, the other thing it appears when you try and research sportsmen, there's always a history of what they've done. There seems to be so little that's kept of great women sports people.
Well, I'll be honest here, lacrosse, I know one of the guys, or the people who is the secretary and kept all the records, got annoyed and burnt everything. I know netball, they lost all of their history, and a lot of their history in South Australia. So even at Australian level, when we're trying to put things together, we're now going back and saying you need to keep some of these records for history. So for instance, America had never lost a lacrosse game until 1981. Anyone had gotten within 20 goals of them. Australia had never won a lacrosse game, never got within 10 goals of any other country. And we went away and beat America, and we actually did it by changing the game, thinking things differently. And for them, it was the most significant loss ever. And for us, it changed the way the game was and the way we were seen. So losing history like that is pretty important. And that's why we've even started to get Wikipedia pages on some of our great sporting women from South Australia and get that funded, because otherwise all the history disappears.
It's interesting because you talk about that 1981 lacrosse event. It's so similar to the America's Cup. By comparison, here's the America's Cup, never lost, suddenly Australia wins it. It's massive. It's still massive today, isn't it?
Yeah, good point.
But if you talk about the 1981 lacrosse team, people go, well, I don't know anything about that.
Yeah, who were they?
But
Why
by
was it
comparison,
significant?
they're similar, aren't they?
And especially since if you look at it, lacrosse is an Ivy League sport in America, and it would be played by 1 million people at least. So it was the minnows again versus the huge college system there. And we actually showed by being smarter, so it does make a difference. And I actually did a women's conference one day and I put up 15 photos of guys like you, my brother Mark, Cornsey, all of the people, good-looking blokes who influenced sport in South Australia. And it was a women's conference, and all the women could identify everyone except I think Dean Lucan had changed a bit, and they didn't see him. But then I put up women all of the same era, or even slightly less, younger. They recognised Rachel Spawn and Juliet, but they were the only people of women.
Wow.
So that was a women's conference. So if we don't know our history, then we don't have great role models necessarily for the next generations to start coming through and seeing maybe you can play stuff.
All right, let's talk a little bit about yourself without trying to embarrass you. And I know you're embarrassed easily, so coming from the Williams clan. Lacrosse, captain Australia, football, captain South Australia, cricket, South Australia. The list goes on. You could have played a lot of different sports and been very successful at that. We talk about that with men. It doesn't happen that often. You know, there were a few that played footy and cricket, but you've gone across, and I know Jenny Cheeseman, of course, softball, netball, basketball. Why have women been able to adapt to 2 or 3 different sports, men not so much?
I think probably it's just the stage that the games were at with each of the sports, from the point of view that if you look at Chappell's grandfather, Victor Richardson, he played even baseball.
Yep.
So at the time it was more amateur, and people sports didn't want you for every moment of every day, which when football and cricket started to get a lot more professional in men's, all of a sudden they want you every moment of every day. Now, why don't Lefty Fulston, Jenny, Wendy Piltz, me, Jill Kinnair exist in that form anymore? And probably the closest is Elise Perry, who is playing cricket and was also in the soccer group. It's because now they're starting to pay women a little bit, but they expect them to be in these national leagues. So they give them almost no money and then expect you to be available every time of every week to go and fly away to play. And if you don't pay enough money, what happens in the long run is you can't afford to do everything. So we would have the cricket nationals over summer for 2 weeks, so you could work and your club competition was really strong, and Jem would have been the same in softball, for instance. Club competition would have been really strong, and then there would have been a couple of weeks nationals. But now if you play soccer, you have to play in the Women's National Soccer League. Yeah. If you play cricket, you've got to play in the National League. So all of a sudden, you don't have a capacity to either work, get some money, and in fact, that's why we were still playing and playing really well in our late 20s, early 30s. And that's where, if you look at it, a lot of blokes get really good at their sport. Women are disappearing in their mid-20s now because they can't afford to do both.
All right, for you, AFL Woman of the Year.
Oh yeah, that was
South Australian Hall of Fame last year. So you're starting to get some profile. I mean, women are starting to get some recognition, and we agree that not as much as men. Getting inducted in the SA Hall of Fame, what did that mean to you?
It meant it was probably recognition for being captain of the most magnificent group of women
I've
that
seen
you could
some
ever
of those
hang
women.
around with.
Magnificent's a bit harsh.
Yeah,
well, a bit strong.
No, magnificent is
magnificent.
You know, as a psychologist, I'll say what really determines whether you do well or not is drive and the people you surround yourself with. So, in other words, it wasn't just one of us, there was a group who wanted to be the best, who wanted to influence things and change things and be involved. So what did it mean for me? Personally, it was a really nice honour, but again, it's more a case of, as I say to everyone, it's one of those things, you put the trophies in the cupboard, the people you keep around you, and it makes for a great life. And to share it with so many people, and then even previous inductees, that's what I like about South Australia. And if we can make one point on a South Australian program, we are not recognised enough in interstate, and that's probably in selection of current teams now. People have stopped being out there. We're now just compliant, nice little people that you put in the corner. They're South Australian, they can't be too smart, they can't be too clever. Oh look, and not many are getting selected. So I'm saying maybe it's people like you and I, Phil, that have to rock a few boats, because in the long run now, they have a women's group with AFL who input into the whole thing, but they only found out that I existed because I actually said, do you know that I have a lot of ideas about what goes on? Oh, really? Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And
but
you're from
again,
South Australia, that's good. Yeah.
So all I'm saying is, I worry that hockey. We had the last Olympics. There were no women from South Australia in the hockey team. Now we've had significant players from here before, and it's a bit of a worry that if we don't start promoting our state, we're getting less and less people in our state teams, be it male or female. And I think that is something like having our Hall of Fames is really important, because it shows, look what we could do, look what we can do, and let's get more people so that the next generation are coming through.
I agree with that. I don't think we blow our trumpets enough here in South Australia, but in saying that, the Adelaide Oval has become a spectacular venue.
Beautiful.
Everybody's talking about it, and suddenly, the focus is on Adelaide for a little while. But we look around the Oval, Gavin Wanganeen, the Mark Prosciutto, the Neil Curley, the Graham Corns, no women named anywhere.
Oh, you noticed? You noticed, Phil.
Well, I noticed.
I'm very proud of you for noticing
Well,
that.
you told me, otherwise I wouldn't have noticed. But is that a bug? I mean, is that annoying? Where does that sit with you? I mean, Lynn Fulster, for example, does she not deserve some recognition at that venue?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? People think, because you have an opinion on women's issues, that, you must be this zealot and everything. The truth is, it's a passion, and it's a passion because it made a difference in my life. And you've got daughters, and I've got a daughter, and I want them to experience sport, whether at high level or lower level, the joys that we get out of it. Now, if you don't know that women played, and you only see blokes' names around everywhere, I saw in the Australia Honours, it was 4-to-1 male to female ratio, and that's often because blokes are in positions of power.
How did that woman get in there?
Oh, yeah, well,
Really?
I think must have known someone. And, my thing is, unless someone actually starts saying, well, what is it? And I hear cricket are going to do something eventually, but we've opened the Oval. It's been a year. It's an embarrassment not to have some women around the place. And I'm actually pushing, instead of change, look, let's not name women specifically if you're not worried about it, have the Great Southern Women's Stand. The whole end stand is not named. But if you have the Great Southern Women's Stand, and as part of that you have a living history of different women in it, you can promote things, you can have areas where people can go into and have a look. Wow, you know, even in Sydney they had a women's stand, a ladies' stand before, but what's wrong with having something like that and actually going, wow, we've got all these great blokes named around the Oval, but we're saying, and if you know, one of the most important things is the suffragettes used to even meet around the Adelaide Oval to actually talk about how they were going to get the vote. Women were so significant in the history of South Australia that, you know, there was actually, we're the second place in the world to vote and the first place in Australia because we regarded them and because we had a little woman named Mary Lee who apparently was prepared to be a pain in the backside and actually go, hey, wait a minute, we're still here, how about us? And it doesn't always make you popular. I try and keep a sense of humour because I actually really like blokes and they don't get, how can this woman who likes blokes, gets along with them well, still be a pain in our backside? I'm going to be, but what's wrong with a Great Southern Women's Stand? Phil, sounds good, doesn't it?
It does have a nice ring to it, and I'm thinking when you say that, the Southern Women's Stand, who are the first two people you'd name, put names?
Well,
first two names.
Well, I would have some honorary little plaques around. It doesn't have to be big things, but you know, people just read them and have a look at a bit of history. And I would particularly, because it's cricket and because it's also football, at the moment I would go with cricket, definitely with, I think Lynette Fulston, I think someone like Karen Rolton, I think Joe Broadbent. There are people who have been around who are still contributing. And not only did they play, but they coached as well and brought another generation through. And I think that putting back something also should get your name on the stand, not just because you were a great player. Because no offence, that's what makes the game grow and get to there. And the other thing about football is I'd just like them to sort of have a cupboard inside that women's football actually exists, because when you go through the inside, the whole thing has got the history of all football. Women's football is now started in 1990 in South Australia. So it's not as if it's the new kid on the block anymore. Right. And there have been people like Tiffany Lee who's won so many Dutch ski medals. And if you go to Victoria, women's football was huge. Here it's stifled. Yes. Yep. And maybe we need to see some of that being visible to actually help women's footy in this state. All right, let's veer off this for a moment and talk about this. Stop being serious. Yes, let's talk about a bit of your stories. A bit of frivolity and stuff like that. As we sit on this tennis court and we're talking about men and women, obviously the great Foss Williams was here and played on this court. And so did Von, of course. Oh, got to talk about my mother,
we won't let Von miss out. Some of the great sports people that have played on this court. Yeah? Well,
as a kid, I can always remember I was his babysitter, 14, Darren Cale, absolutely pestering my mum and dad and his mum and dad to get, let me have a hit, it's my turn to have a hit. So he was always on here and he turned out to be a really good tennis player. Vicky Cardwell, who went on to be an international squash player. Well, the fence at the back used to be a little bit lower, but she used to jump it. And like all the footballers would come over and go, oh, and Foss used to always say she was another one of those that if she was a bloke, she would have been one of the first chosen in your team. And then really every footballer that Dad coached at some stage, they had a football day here. I've now had, a couple of years ago, a lot of the current Port guys, you know, came along and played. But it's funny, I think they were probably nicer than my dad's era and hitting it at each other and things like that. All of my friends have been here. It's been used by a few of the elite golfers across the road, not only used it for tennis, but I've got to say, Brody, that plays for Port now, probably plays some really good cricket out here too. So it's not only been used as a tennis court, it's been used as a cricket area, it's been used as chasey, throw the ball as hard as you can at each other, you know, like, and of course we've even had some famous square dance out here for birthday parties. So Dad built it so that it was a place where people could come and be part of a team. Yep. And, you know, like Phil barbecues every grand final, whether, you know, if you're not playing, you're actually bringing all your friends over. And that's been the special thing about this court, and it's a lot of history. And yeah, and in some ways I wish it could talk, because I reckon it would have done a great interview with you of all the people. Some great stories. All right, let's clear this up while we get a chance. Mark Williams, Stephen Williams, Anthony Williams, and of course yourself, Jen Williams. Who is the tennis player? Who is the gun tennis player? Mark Williams.
Oh, Mark, but he always claims he's best at everything, Jen.
He's not best,
He's best at everything.
He is not best
Surely
at everything.
not the best
no,
on the
no,
tennis
he
court.
is not best at everything. But in tennis, had Mark not gone on to be a footballer, a lot of people don't know, but he was actually a really, really good tennis player, and he was also a junior state. Yeah, well, that was the interesting thing, because I'm running drills at something, and he's playing basketball. And he didn't even know how to do a layup properly. And I'm going, how did you not do this? Well, he missed first year at UniSA, where, Adelaide Teachers College, where we all learnt to play basketball.
People who are working for a living.
Which, by the way, gave me a lacrosse career, so I'm never going to doubt that. But he didn't do that. And so I would be laughing because he honestly didn't know a lot of stuff about basketball. But then when I did coach your daughter, he was prepared to tell me how to do it, of course.
Nothing's changed there. Now, of course, you've got a terrific business going with your on-ground performance.
Best on-ground
performance, and the psychology part of it. And everybody looks for a quick fix. So there isn't one. We know that. It takes a lot of work. Most people, though, they focus on their kicking. They focus on their handball. But the mental side of the game seems to get pushed over to a bit of a side. Is that going to be the new area, the cutting edge stuff you think clubs will find? I mean, they have their psychologists, but do you think they'll start to embrace it better than they have in the past? Because there's certainly flaws in it at the moment.
There are flaws. The flaws exist in two ways. Some is because the player's not being developed well enough. Now, I'll give you a thing for me. I have a problem with the draft system that can draft young men into areas where they don't get the best coaching, and where in fact they can be put under stresses that they've never seen before, and they end up doing really dumb things. I've written to the Players Association, I've written to the Sports Commission, talking about how can you have players in an area where they're not being developed fully, and then they end up doing bad things, dumb things, or hurtful things to themselves or others because they don't know any better way. And all you expect psychologists to do is pick up the pieces or treat the symptoms. Sometimes the cause of the whole problem is that they are not being developed fully as an athlete.
Yep.
And you and I will agree, I am trying to make anyone who works with me becomes a much more critical consumer of how they're being developed. How are they being coached? Have they got an expert coach, or have they got an average coach? Have they got someone with imagination? And so in doing that, and in making people start to understand is their development, and there's many aspects of development, not only technical, but also personal and also psychological. If you're not getting the best information and the best feedback, then you are not developing. So when you ask me about, is there two things? Well, number one, yeah, we actually know it's a longer process, and in fact, Kahneman and Gladwell are two brilliant authors, and anyone who's watching this or wanting to get better, if you do not understand mastery of 10,000 hours and you want to dispute it, come and have a chat with me, because we expect people to be too good too early, and they haven't done enough work in it, and then they get disappointed in themselves, or other people get disappointed in them, instead of actually going, come on, rejection folder, put it in, get better. How are we going to get better? How many people have interviewed you in the last year, Phil, about how to be a champion basketballer?
None.
Unbelievable, isn't it? So in other words, if I have an athlete and they're coming to me and they're a basketballer, I'm saying there are people out there who are great, who are older, who don't want to die with a head full of knowledge that they're actually happy to pass on.
I'm in no danger, Jen.
Oh, yeah. Okay, that's true. But your head is so full, yes. Look what's happened to it. Mine's overgrown with knowledge, and yours has actually been worn down with that.
Yours fertiliser than mine.
So basically what we're saying is, if I wanted to fast track someone in basketball and they were going to be like you and they wanted to be a general, or they were supposed to be in charge, I'm telling them to sit with you and say, Phil, what did you do? How did you get better? Who did you talk to? What did you do this? Because again, you might give them 5 ideas that'll get them worth 200 hours that someone else takes 200 hours of practice to do.
Makes sense,
so find champions, find out what they do, and then in psychology, don't fall for average, because too many leadership things and what people are being told is either not true or very average. So again, start to learn. If you want to be the best, talk to the best and find out the best.
All right, get to on-ground performance.
No, best on ground
performance.
Everyone's on the ground, Phil. We want to be best on ground.
Best on ground performance, and get that information if you want to be an elite athlete. Last question, because we have to go. Best sportswoman. What sportswoman of all time for you? Is there one that stands out?
See, again, you want a one-word sentence?
No, one answer.
Can I?
I know I can't ever get one. Oh,
can I give two?
All right, your top two.
Well, first of all, my mum. Because if you're asking who was an influence on what I saw as optimism, bouncing back, resilience, absolutely brilliant.
Yep.
And then There's so many, but even the Williams sisters are pretty good at their craft. And in fact, that's why I'm not going to give you, I'm not going to come back to one because like
Venus,
anything else, Venus, Serena, if I don't know them, I find it really difficult to actually say exactly what the judge is. And I see people when you look at, actually Steffi Graf might be right up there because she and Andre seem to have a pretty good life off and after the game.
Good balance.
Yeah, good balance. And I'd say, yeah, that's an indicator for me who is great, is they have a balance when they finish.
All right, we could talk forever. We need to go. Jenny Williams, our very special guest, one of South Australia's very special, very, very special, in a lot of different ways, really, but one of South Australia's great women's sports people. We need to take a break. Back with more in a moment.